The Jurchen people are one of the historical winners of EU5's time period. You wouldn't know that from playing EU5 though, because you'll never see them unify and successfully conquer China. So let's correct that. Today we're playing as the small 2-location miner of Huaba. Our goal, form Later Jin, conquer China. First things first, we're going to immediately form an independence movement. It's important that we do this, because if we don't, someone else will. Now we're going to focus on pulling as many of China's vassals, or Yuan's vassals, into this independence movement. To start with, a lot of people don't like us because we start with a fair amount of antagonism, so we're going to need to improve relationships. We're going to prioritize people like Korea and also the Kingdom of Liang in southern China. There's a few countries we don't want to pull in though. We don't want to pull in Shenyang here, or these two hordes. They're less of an issue. We could pull them in, but I'd prefer trying not to. The main reason we pick this nation to play is because they start as the leader of the Jurchen Federation, which means they can choose which policies to pick for the laws, and us being in charge lets us make sure that good laws are picked. Since one of the main blockades for us is actually going to be our income, our priority is actually to pick laws that increase monthly tribal cohesion passively, so that we can avoid paying to increase it. There is potential for us to forcibly unify the Manchu tribes, but personally I prefer not to, because if we unify them we actually dissolve the federation, but if we don't unify them we can keep the federation around, which means we can continue to get the benefits from it, and I enjoy free benefits. When it comes to the economy, we basically make no money. But that's not really a surprise. One thing we're going to do is we're going to demolish the barracks that starts in our capital. In fact, we'll probably demolish every barracks we have. The manpower again is nice, I guess, but it's not like we can afford an army, so we're going to demolish them whenever we come across them. We will keep the fort in our capital just so we have some defensibility against being full occupied. For our one reform we can hand out, I think we're going to save it for the next age. And for our god, I think we'll pick the death god as our patron, and I believe we're ready, so we'll unpause. Our goal for this period, as I said, is to improve relationships with people and bring them into our coalition or independence movement. We could bring Ashikaga in, but I don't think it's really worth it. Depends on how things play out. Even though we're forming an independence movement, we're not going to rush to declare our independence. We want a revolt to trigger in Yuan, and they pretty much always do trigger a revolt. Once that happens, we can declare our independence movement. But until then, we're kind of just going to improve relationships and peacefully do nothing. Once we improve relationships to positive, most of these guys should join our independence movement without us even needing to ask. Though we do need to be careful that they do. We don't want to have situations where we improve relationships but they don't join our independence movement, right? Unfortunately, we can't see Tibet and this nation over here. It'd be really nice if we could see them and could pull them into our independence movement, but as I said, we can't see them, so we just have to accept not being able to pull them in. We could potentially steal maps from Yuan and in that way gain vision, but it really depends on how much of a spy network we can build up before the revolt happens. We don't really want to waste time getting up to 40 spy network in order to steal maps when we could just, fight and win our independence much earlier. There's the Yuan revolt. We're in a perfect opportunity to declare our independence. Our independence movement is quite large and it has basically everyone we want in it. Even though these nations aren't highlighted, they're all vassals to Liang, so they will join. There's one thing we want to do before we declare war though. We need to be careful. We really want to annex Shenyang, but if they're too loyal, we won't be able to, obviously. So what we're going to do is we're going to wait a few months just to increase our spy network to the point where we can agitate liberty in Shenyang. It's a little risky because every second that we're not revolting, the rebels in Yuan make more progress. But just in case, I've done it without doing this, but I'd rather not risk it not triggering. There we go, a bit of a nail biter, but let's agitate liberty in Shenyang and immediately rally our movement for liberty and all that. So our goals with this war are quite simple. We of course want to gain our independence, but we also want to take as much land off of Yuan as we can in our region so we can form Manchu or Later Jin. Luckily, we're a lot stronger than Yuan with all of our revolters, so we can just sit back and let our friends and allies do all the occupying. We do need to be quite proactive when it comes to making peace with Yuan's vassals. We really want to peace out as many of them as we can, because if they're in the war, they'll of course lose soldiers, which will make the overall strength of their vassals higher, which will increase the loyalty of their other vassals. We really want to increase the power of their vassals to make the other ones disloyal. Very simple, right? We're also pushing ourselves towards belligerentism because it reduces the cost of taking land. And of course, we want to take as much land as we possibly can. There's Shenyang defeated. We're just going to full annex them. No questions asked. We can now raise their armies as our own, which gives us an extra 10,000 levies. Of course, taking all that land gave us lots of buildings, which are bad for the economy. So we're going to demolish most of them, get rid of these Jurchen barracks, get rid of this provincial garrison. We'll also demolish most of the forts we have. Oh, we'll also demolish this segment of the Great Wall of China as well. Great Wall of China is kind of completely useless. We're going to keep this fort here because there's an event that moves our capital here. So we'd like to keep that location. All right, it's time to make peace with Yuan. I did want to separate peace this vassal and annex them, but unfortunately they've just proven a little too loyal. But well, it's not the end of the world. We'll take most of their land in this peace, then we'll take this vital province here, and then we'll take bits of land, as much as we can, around the edge. And boom, that gives us our independence, as well as all of our friends within the Federation. We're now on 68 of the 112 provinces we need to form Manchu. We'll of course demolish any of the barracks we take from taking this land. If our economy truly gets into a terrible situation, we could always start mint maxing, but unless we need to do that, I'd like to avoid it for as long as possible. But our economy isn't doing great, so we are going to start mint maxing. We just need to survive long enough that we can conquer all of China, then our economy will essentially solve itself. Now it's time to deal with the last of the Manchu tribes, that aren't us obviously. Feels a bit mean to say, but we're going to turn on our friends, because they would be much better suited as part of our realm. So we're going to create a tribal feud CB on one of them. Doesn't really matter who. There's our CB online. We will of course declare war and pull in the entire Federation against us. This is exactly as intended. We're going to use this as an opportunity to annex all of the tribes potentially. When it comes to pure numbers, they're actually stronger than us. Our advantage, of course, is that our armies are unified, where they are all separate nations with their own armies. That, of course, gives us a little more oomph when compared to these guys and their separate, weaker armies. We can just basically stack wipe them one at a time as they just wander into us. And then we can look at the nations that don't have forts, occupy them and annex them. Once we've dealt with all the nations without forts, then we can turn our attention to the ones with forts. One thing I've noticed is that some of these guys have vassals. Normally what I'd say is we'll just annex the host nation and then take the vassal as our own. But in this situation, we actually want to fully remove them from the map, conquering their vassals as well. So we'll try to avoid getting any vassals of our own, instead just focus on those full annexations. As we conquer land, we're also going to be able to call up new armies from inside of it, which will help us clear out a lot of the weaker nations who don't even have armies anymore, as we can just assign these new armies that have been put under our control to go around and siege things. We've become a duchy. That's a nice rank up. Not quite to the point where we can form Manchu yet though, but at this point the tribes can't really oppose us. They've only got around 1,000, 2,000 men left. To be fair, we only have around 5,000. That's more than 2,000. A bit of a coalition formed against us amongst some of the other minor tribes in the region. They've decided to declare war. I'm not really sure why, because we're stronger than them, but it is what it is, I guess. Funnily enough, some of the native tribes who we weren't planning to annex have actually joined the war on our side. So we do have friends, and we can form Manchu now, so I think we're just going to do so immediately. And then we'll proclaim ourselves Later Jin. This will give us the Warring States reform, which basically lets us annex vast swathes of China through the Red Turban Rebellion casus belli. And then because our ruler has won a bunch of battles himself, he immediately gets the event the Dragon Tiger, which gives him the Dragon Tiger general trait. A pretty good trait overall. I'm not sure if it's possible to get it again once one ruler gets it, but it is what it is. Always need to make sure to demolish those Jurchen barracks. Since these tribes have chosen to defy us, we'll basically just do with them what we were doing with the other guys, that being occupy them, and since they don't have forts, we'll just full annex them. Although we would have, but I forgot, this is a coalition war, which means we cannot separate peace anybody. How disappointing. I suppose we don't need to now, though. We are Later Jin now, so honestly we don't actually need any more land in Manchuria, so I guess we'll just take some money off them, humiliate them, and then go about the rest of our day. Now that we formed Later Jin, we don't actually need to keep this land for ourselves. So what we're going to do is we're just going to hand it out to a bunch of vassals. With an exception, of course, we're not going to release Shenyang. That's territory we want to have for ourselves. It does put us a bit on a back foot because all our vassals are like, now we're strong. But they're not that strong. And it's not that difficult keeping them in check. There's only 2 that aren't really in check. And as our decentralization is pushed up from having all these vassals, the remaining few that aren't loyal will be made loyal. Now we're kind of just waiting for the Yuan revolt to end. Unfortunately, these revolts can last essentially forever until one side essentially gives up. Once that does happen though, the Red Turban Rebellion should trigger immediately, and we can see about getting involved. Oh well, there we go. These guys annexed the other Yuan, and there's the Red Turban Rebellion, just as I said. Because we're a warring state nation, we can participate in the Red Turban Rebellion. So once our truce with Yuan expires, which should be about a year in January, we're immediately going to attack Yuan and see if we can't just annex as much of China as possible. Or we would have, but this tribe here has revolted. We kind of want this to happen though, because we aren't part of the Red Turban Rebellion. We're kind of just a hanger-on, which means we cannot win the Red Turban Rebellion unless we join, and it's not intended that we join. In fact, it shouldn't be possible to join. But if we surrender in this war, we will be pulled into the Red Turban Rebellion even when we're not intended to be, making it basically cheating. But we're going to do it anyway. If we wait about a year, we can surrender to Yuan, and in so doing, become a member of the Red Turban Rebellion. There, we'll now surrender to Yuan, letting them rein us in, which will pull us into the Red Turban Rebellion, though as a loyalist to Yuan. We're now going to use our regional war CB to declare war on every single one of the revolters. We're not going to be able to really reach them, as it's not like Yuan's going to give us access through their lands, but it will stop Yuan calling us into war to fight against them. In 7 years' time, our truce with Yuan will be up, and we can fire our own supremacy war against them. Wu, of all nations, has decided the best use of their time was to travel up from their nation to ours. That might seem terrible, but they're actually just all going to die from attrition due to lack of food and our death god. So not really my problem, right? We'll just leave them all to bleed out. Not really sure why they decided to come up here, but you know. Who can explain the ideals behind the AI's behavior? One of the Chinese tribes or nations has continuously attacked us, so we were able to rack up a bit of war score against them. So we're going to demand most of their land. We can't actually reach them, so we couldn't full occupy them. But now we have a bunch of Chinese land under our control, and we can raise another 16,000 levies there. And just like that, the kingdom of Wu just expanded in a big way. And we have a border with them. So we're going to march south from our new territories into Wu. Wu is actually quite weak, honestly. They spent tens of thousands of men, literally nearly 100,000 men, in the far north, trying to occupy our Manchurian territory. Here's an event. So, as we expand in China, we periodically get groups of soldiers. We get around 1,600 horsemen, regulars, obviously. Unfortunately, they're not that useful, mainly because they cost a lot of money. If we look at our money right now, we're losing 9 ducats a month. Now that we have these soldiers, we're losing 29 ducats a month. So using them long term isn't really viable. They'll just bankrupt us. With that in mind, we're just going to throw them against Wu as much as possible until they're all bled out. Or the Wu army is completely annihilated, whichever one comes first. Luckily, these are regulars, so they can just demolish, essentially, anyone they fight against, though there aren't that many of them. Being backed by our levies should be enough for them to deal big damage. Even in cases where the game says they're stronger than us, we should be able to win. Our truce with Yuan has finally ended, so now we can march south through their lands. When it comes to war score, we only need to get around 10, and then we should just be able to make vast demands from anyone and everyone we're at war with because of the CB. Though, of course, getting 10 war score is easier said than done when coming up against these very large Chinese states. But it shouldn't be too difficult, especially with how weak they are, or how weakened they've become. Especially in the case of Yuan, who I don't think has any soldiers at all, nope. Oh, and right in the middle of our war with Yuan, Jizhao has revolted. So I suppose what we'll do is we'll take as much land as we can from Yuan. That'll give us a load more levies. Then we'll declare war on Jizhao. How strong are they? They only got 7,000 men. So we'll declare war on them. They don't have any forts, so we may just be able to slip in, full occupy them, and be done with them. There is, of course, still Wu to deal with. We're very close. If we can get 10 war score, we should be able to just full annex their entire nation. It's just that racking up war score against such a large nation is fairly difficult. But it looks like we've done it. So now we're going to full annex Wu. This is going to be pretty crazy. Doesn't really feel like we should be able to, but we can. The beauties of the Red Turban Rebellion. And there, we control all of northern China now. Honestly, at this point, there's no one that can really stop us. We should just be able to conquer everybody. The problem will continue to be our economy. We essentially make no money from our vast territory. One option we do have, though, is we can actually spend money to reign in areas, which will full core them. Or at least make them integrated cores. But it feels like it's a bit of a waste of money. But at the same time, I think, yeah, let's do it. Let's reign in some areas. We want to reign in areas we fully occupy, just to save money in the long term. So we'll just reign in a few of these guys. At the very least, them becoming cored means we'll be able to extract a bit of income from them. But our economy is going to be still very much non-existent. Let's begin mint maxing again. We could demolish a bunch of the forts, but I kind of want to keep them, because it will help slow down any enemies we're at war with. One thing we do want to avoid is being at peace, because being at peace means that the revolts that are going to happen against us can happen. So we're just going to keep up the wars. We're going to keep declaring war on people and expanding. Ming looks pretty weak right now, so we're going to grab them next. Looks like the land is going to be divided between Chen in the south and us in the north, which honestly sounds pretty good to me. We're also going to go around demolishing some of the buildings. Demolishing buildings never feels good, but as long as we survive, we're going to become rich enough to build literally anything we want. So in the short term, demolishing these buildings is beneficial. It's a little sad about the Great Wall of China, though. It's so expensive keeping it available, and it's not like it does anything. It provides a little garrison and a fort, but it doesn't actually block armies. So it's kind of pointless to keep it. We can upgrade it so it does block armies, but still, it's just not very good. So we'll demolish all of the Great Walls, demolish the provincial garrisons, and I guess we'll demolish a few castles. Our economy's not looking good, though. We could just stop spending money on the cost of our court and on diplomatic spending. That would only result in one tribe becoming disloyal. So maybe we'll do that. We'll keep the forts available and, you know, we're going to lose tribal cohesion, but we're actually in a regency, which is one of the reasons why we're losing it at quite a high rate. But I'm not sure it matters that much. Losing tribal confederacy is actually pretty bad because it reduces our levy size, but our levy size is so high at this point, at more than 100,000, that I don't think losing a few points in our levy size will be a catastrophe. All right, that's Ming gone. We're again going to demand their complete annexation. Now we're immediately going to go for Chen. No reason to delay. Chen is weaker than us, and now that we have that extra land from Ming, we can call up another 40,000 men, and now march south into the Chen lands. That's it for Chen, pretty easy war. We'll demand their full, complete annexation, just like with everybody else. There, now we control most of China. We're of course going to continue our expansion though. There's only little tribes really left, but we're going to see about mopping them up. In fact, let's do them all at once, really. There's also the Kingdom of Liang here in the south. Going more with them will mean going to war with all of their little vassals, though. So let's clean up the other bigger nations first before we go to war with Liang. All right, that's most of the tribes over here. It's going to take a little while to annex Li, simply because they have a fort in their capital, which we'll of course need to occupy. So with that said, we're going to go to war with Liang and pull in their many vassals. Depending on their vassal loyalty, we might be able to just annex a bunch of these. We'll see how it goes, though. It's going to be a little bit of a hellish war, because we're advancing into the jungles of the Yan'an region. But I'm sure it'll be fine. Yuan decided to attack me before I could attack them. That's kind of perfect. We'll see about using this war to fully expel Yuan from China. I was going to say things are going perfectly, but this nation here has decided to occupy Beijing. I'm not really sure how they managed it, but they did, and of course they won't hand it over to me, its rightful master, so we're just going to make peace with Yuan. We'll take the few bits of China they still control outside of Beijing, and then we'll come back for them later. Now we'll turn our full attention to Liang. We're going to take heavy losses occupying their territory because they're all pagan. But honestly, I'm fine with that. One thing is maybe we should switch out our religion now. Our religion isn't that great, and the main benefit to it is the attrition we can do to our enemies. But at this point, attrition doesn't matter as much. So I think we are going to switch out for Sanjiao. That'll help bring the natives round to our rule. Unfortunately, we've gone with Yuan again. but they're still at war with this nation here. They've been at war for how long? 6 years? I'm not sure whether the war will ever actually end. I suppose all we can really do is just wait. At the very least, the Red Turban Rebellion is likely going to end soon, but even if it does, our war with Yuan won't end. So it's honestly kind of fine. We've subjugated pretty much all of China at this point. Is there anywhere we haven't got? There's Yuan's territory, obviously. I think in South China, we've got everyone. It looks like we haven't got Vietnam, obviously, though. Vietnam is a vassal of Yuan, though, so it's not like we can separate war them. I suppose we could occupy their territory, though, and potentially take it off Yuan. And I believe next month the Red Turban Rebellion should end. Yep, there we go. The Red Turban Rebellion officially ends. We, Later Jin, win. We'll take over the Middle Kingdom, become an empire, gain stability and tribal cohesion. But our real reward for winning the Red Turban Rebellion is cores on all of China, even the parts we don't directly control. So now all of this land that we've been trying to manage is suddenly our core. Isn't that beautiful? It means our economy is going to bounce back pretty rapidly. And we can also accept large amounts of cultures now due to being the head of the Middle Kingdom. So this should go a long way to help pacifying the native people and making us money. And there, would you look at that? We're actually making money. We're going to bring down our cost of minting, obviously. We're quite a bit inflation. So we'd like to bring that down as fast as possible. It looks like that tribe we were talking about, the annoying one, did manage to take land from Yuan. They've taken most of Mongolia off them. They also took Beijing, unfortunately, though they've released it as a vassal. With that in mind, there's not much reason to continue our war with Yuan. We're just going to occupy some of this Vietnamese territory, and then we'll have Yuan return all of it to us. Because after all, it's our cores, because it's in South China. Because of how this ended up working out, we've lost our CB, of course, to attack and get supremacy, but we do have this quite good CB, the Unified China CB, which reduces the cost of taking land in China massively. So that's likely how we'll deal with that minor tribe. Also, since we have cores on the rest of China, we can just create CBs to reclaim those. Dai Viet is a little stronger than I thought they would be. I think they must have regulars in this army. Or maybe mercenaries. No, yeah, they have regulars. Although those are only auxiliaries. It looks like they have one unit of regulars. Maybe the Vietnamese are just really strong. They're absolutely blasting us, though I'm not sure. I think we will win this battle, maybe? They do have a fair bit more discipline than us, but we beat them on morale, but they're just pretty good. Although, as I said, we do win. Well, the problems with this war is it's going to be hard for us to rack up war score because there is no Yuan for us to really occupy. Where is Yuan? They're up here, I think. This is them, and they're already occupied by somebody else. They have 5 locations, though, but this is only 2. Where's the rest of them? Who knows? So we might have to just accept that we're not going to get to take anything in this war, simply because we don't have vision on Vietnam. Although if they keep sending their army over and we keep beating them, that would solve the issue. It's whether we will keep beating them after all. And another problem is our vassals are aware of Vietnamese territory, so they'll cross into the darkness, get annihilated by the Vietnamese, and lose us war score. And it'll take too long for us to discover the region. So let's see, let's fight, or let's not, they're too fast, we can't catch them. I guess let's just make peace. It's not like Vietnam's going anywhere. So we're at peace now, so we're going to have a bunch of revolts trigger. Unfortunately, there's not really any way for us to stop this. Even though the people in these lands aren't that unhappy now, they still remember being unhappy. So the only way for us to resolve it is to just crush the revolts. Now that we've become a kingdom and are no longer a tribe, we can actually start changing the policies for our tribal union. Because funnily enough, while they did increase or decrease tribal cohesion, they don't do the same for legitimacy, although it costs legitimacy, of course, to switch options. So of course we can just fire these off and have no extra costs. Monthly prosperity plus 0.10, thank you very much. Our economy isn't really in the best of places right now, but it will recover. If we wanted to, we could just mint to ensure we have a positive income. Though of course we do want to bring down our inflation, which is quite high at this point. Here's our first revolt. We've demolished every fort in the country, so dealing with these revolts will be very simple. You shouldn't even need to fight their armies, just slip past them and occupy their capital. Should be enough to get them to surrender in most cases. Here's one of the few Manchu events in the game, the subjugation of Korea. It gives us a CB to attack Korea and subjugate them. If we do it within a certain time period, we get a reward, and if we fail to do it within that time period, we get punished, as it were. It's pretty easy to do though. Korea's pretty weak. We're all of China. Once we deal with all these revolts, we can definitely set that as our next target. There, that's all the revolts dealt with, or at least the ones that are going to currently happen. The rest of them are pretty passive. Are any of these going to actually revolt? I think the Bow Patriots may, the Bay Patriots, but I don't think anyone else. Everyone else is either declining or has no revolt growth, so we're pretty secure. We should probably take this chance to come down on Korea and subjugate them, bring them into the fold as a tributary, and we can also think about fabricating a CB on that nation that stole Beijing from us. But with all that said, I think we're going to leave it here. You may notice one extra thing with the Manchu Empire and not Qing. Unfortunately, the event to form Qing seems to be somewhat bugged. I've checked the event and we meet all the criteria, but it doesn't seem to trigger. I could just trigger it manually. But honestly, the Manchu Empire kind of sounds cooler than Qing. I think it likely doesn't work because of the roundabout way we went to taking over China, that being slipping into the Red Turban Rebellion and then winning that to core all of China for free. I think if we'd done it the natural way, we would have formed Qing. Either way though, I think we'll leave the video here. This video should be coming out the day that the newest patch comes out, so I will likely not be continuing this campaign. I think I'll hand out the save file though. There should be a pinned post for this video where I link the save if you want to continue this Manchu Empire or play around with it yourself. Please feel free. But as I said, this is the end of the video. Thank you for watching and I'll see you next time.